Hey guys, welcome back. So today we're out at the range with a bunch of different firearms to talk about how the small arms market has evolved since, let's say, around the early 2000s. What am I talking about? Well, the U.S. military SCAR program, which was an effort to adopt a new military service rifle or service rifles for the special operations community while we were engaged in war. And of course, we had 20 years of war, and we were constantly looking for different weapon systems to arm our military with to better their advantage on the battlefield. Now, since I've been alive, they've been trying to replace the M16 in the U.S. military. The SCAR program wasn't necessarily an effort to replace the M16 globally within the U.S. military. It was for that niche market of the special operations community. But from that program came a lot of really good ideas that have propagated globally around the manufacturing communities for small arms for all the world's militaries, and they seem to be borrowing pretty heavily from those technologies that came from that SCAR program. So initially, we have the SCAR. This is a 16 and 5.56. Obviously, this is a civilian model because it has the muzzle brake on it and the longer barrel. And there's a bunch of different variants of this, and there are Gen 2 versions with non-reciprocating charging handles. But some of the things that this gun makes it somewhat unique is it's super lightweight. So we have extensive use of polymers in this particular gun, extruded aluminum and polymers. If you go back to classic firearms, we're talking about steel and wood, and then we move into the World War II era, and we look at stampings in wood and stampings in polymer going into the Cold War, and then the M16 comes along, and we start looking at polymers and machined aluminum, and now the next evolutionary step is more use of polymers, not just in handguards. Now we're going to use them in stocks and lower receivers, and in some cases upper receivers. So the use of polymers is becoming more and more common. And so that, again, kind of started around the 2004 era with this particular rifle in the program. Another rifle that was in the program that looks similar to the SCAR because it was going for those same requirements of the SCAR program is the Robinson Armament XCR. Now, before this rifle, they were making a rifle that was very similar to the Stoner 63, and that rifle got canceled so that Rob Arms could move over to this, and they were really hoping to get win that SCAR program. Ironically, they were kicked out of the program for what I deemed to be a bogus reason. They didn't have a muzzle device or something, and instead of just saying, hey guys, can you send this over, they just kind of kicked the entire gun out of the program. I think if the XCR had the budget, had it been adopted and then gone through all the update programs and stuff like that, the R&D that would have been invested into it at that point, I think this gun could have been as good or better than the SCARs that we know and love that are already out there. And then a gun that would come a little later, a couple years later, 2004 is when we learned of the SCAR. 2006, we learned about the Magpul Masada, which would later become the Remington and Bushmaster ACR, which is this gun. So Masada was developed by Magpul, and then when they got it to a certain point, they sold that off to Bushmaster and Remington because they were of the same group at that point. And they would continue the development. They would continue to try to sell this to the U.S. military and allies and stuff like that around the world. But ultimately, Remington would go out of business, and Bushmaster and this rifle is not currently in production, although the rights to it, I believe, were sold to Franklin Armory. Maybe we'll see something happen down the road. Now, some of the other unique characteristics of this particular style of rifle would be not just the modularity, but the ability to switch calibers very quickly. You can easily take out barrels and swap out parts, put different stocks, different lowers, things like that on it, customize the gun however you need for that particular mission set. And so that's what really drove the program. Now, the SCAR didn't do so well in the U.S. military when it was used. The 75th Rangers adopted the SCAR 16 for a brief time. They decided to go back to M4s. The SCAR 17 and 30 caliber and 6.5 Creedmoor, and probably the U.S. government has it in other cartridges as well, did see a little bit more acceptance in the U.S. military special forces community, and it still is being used, but still it seems like the military is still looking for something else, which is why we now have the SIG Spear system. Convoluted, I know. Boy, the U.S. government has been spending a lot of time and money trying to replace that M16, which is still America's longest-serving infantry rifle. All right, so let's take a look at some of the other guns that globally were developed out of this program based upon the technologies and features that came of the program, again, that has totally changed the landscape of small arms development. A lot of folks ask me, how can I get involved in the firearms business in that particular community? And one of the best ways to do that is to become a gunsmith. Every gunsmith I know is just overbooked with work. It's a very good living. And so if you would like to become a gunsmith, you need to go to a gunsmithing school or become an apprentice for an existing gunsmith. But Modern Gun School is an accredited college that also works with veterans in the GI Bill, where you can go and get a degree from accredited college in gunsmithing and then go out and start your own gunsmithing business, which I think is a really great option. Again, throughout my entire life, gunsmiths have always been able to earn a really good living, assuming they have a really strong work ethic. So please check out Modern Gun School. I do have a link in the video description below. Of course, the SCAR itself was extremely influential, but I'm going to go with the Magpul Masada / Bushmaster ACR as being the definitive most influential rifle in terms of how the global small arms community is responding to the developments from the program. And again, this is not a program gun, this came a couple years later. But if you take a look at the ACR, the things about it that really have driven the entire market space are things like this stock. This stock is revolutionary. People are using this stock all over the place. Matter of fact, we just recently did a video on the X17. It's the Perun, and it has a version of this stock. It's not made by Magpul, but it's a cloned copy of this stock. And the unique features of it are how it adjusts for length of pull. It has this riser here for the cheek rest. It has the ability to fold, has a storage compartment here, and it's lightweight and quite durable. So you'll see people buying adapters, putting these things on all sorts of firearms. Sadly, Magpul doesn't want to make these stocks. And so now you're gonna have to look at the B5 solutions and things like that that are coming to market out there. But this stock definitely played a big role in terms of what other countries like Poland with the MSBS and other countries, the weapon systems that they developed, I think very much mirror this gun. Matter of fact, if you take a look at an MSBS from Poland, you might actually confuse it for an ACR. But what's interesting is that with the MSBS from Poland, they actually have a conversion kit because it's so modular that you can actually even go so far as to convert it into a bullpup, which is really, really cool. But some of the other features, obviously, would be things like the use of polymers for the lower. So we have an entire lower assembly now that's made of polymer. Of course, polymer handguards and stuff, but the M16 did that. Side charging with non-reciprocating charging handles. Later, the SCAR would get a non-reciprocating charging handle. Yes, the early prototypes didn't have one. For whatever reason, the Army wanted a reciprocating charging handle, which then they changed their mind. And then, of course, we have the extruded aluminum receiver, lightweight, robust, durable, easy to manufacture, but it's also monolithic with its 1913 rail across the top, so it's great for mounting accessories, optics, lights, lasers, whatever it is you need to get the job done. The rifle that we have here has a Primary Arms MD25 on it. Now I want to talk quickly about the Odyssey series of products. They launched 3 new products. We'll talk about each of them separately, either in shorts or in videos here on the Military Arms channel. Today we're going to talk about the MD25. This is a optic that's currently available for $99, and this thing has an ACS reticle system in it. It's very affordable, durable, aluminum manufacturing, housing. And then if you take a look at the mount system on it, the mount and the box are going to come with different types of mounts, so you can set it really low, raise it up if you need to. Also uses a standard footprint, and so this thing's very durable, has an outstanding reticle, has daylight illumination on it, uses standard CR2032 battery, just an outstanding optic for $99. If you're like me and you have a bunch of rifles, you don't want to put $800 aim points on everything because it just simply isn't in the budget. Optics like this are a great way to go. Even if you're just on a budget, you don't want to put aim points on everything. These are still great options out there, so check out the new Odyssey series of products from Primary Arms. All right, so the ACR, an outstanding rifle. Let's take a look at a couple of rifles that we can get here in the United States that are heavily based on this rifle and the SCAR and the XCR. Let's take a look at the ones that we can get here in the United States, and I'll name a few others off, like the MSBS that we can't get currently in the United States, but maybe if we're lucky in the future, we'll be able to. So one of the rifles that came in years ago that is definitely inspired by the SCAR program and the various rifles we've talked about at the beginning of the video is the Bren 805. Many people call this the Czech SCAR because it literally is a copy by the Czechs of the SCAR. Now, they made a number of different changes. Parts don't interchange with the SCAR, but if you take a look at this thing, it certainly has the look right down to its original reciprocating charging handle. Now, this gun has not quite so functional of a stock, but still a polymer side folding stock. We have the polymer lower, we have the aluminum upper, monolithic rail. You get the point. Now, this gun kind of was an incomplete thought. I love the 805, but a lot of people had complaints about it, including the Czech military, which I think were valid. The reciprocating charging handle needed to go. Taking this gun apart, you have a roll pin holding the bolt and carrier together. In the field, you just want to be able to take the gun apart without having to use punches to get your gun apart. So a lot of different things were changed about this gun that would evolve into what we now know as the Bren 2, which is also here on the US market. We'll show that briefly here in just a moment. Now, this one is an SBR, and this one has been painted to mirror the gray that the Czechs had originally used. And then this one's been converted to use the original magazines. The original 805s that were imported uses standard Stenag magazines, AR-15 type magazines. So I had to convert this, had to Cerakote it, had to SBR it, file a tax stamp, find the stock, but I was able to put together an original 805. I love these rifles, very smooth shooting guns, very cool guns. But yeah, you can definitely see how this gun was 100% inspired by our SCAR program. Let's quickly take a look at the Bren 2, which is a product improved version of this rifle, but the changes are substantial and definitely worth investing in them if you're using this type of a rifle as a go-to rifle. I would definitely move over to the Bren 2. This is the Bren 2. You've seen it here on the channel before. It was most commonly sold as a pistol here in the United States, but some of the rifles also made it in. This was one of the rifles with a 16-inch barrel. Now, again, if you take a look at this, it looks very similar to the 805 that precedes it, but this gun has a lot of improvements. First of all, it has a non-reciprocating charging handle that can be moved to the other side. You can move the charging handle to the other side on the 805 as well. But if you come back here and take a look at the stock, all polymer, definitely inspired by either the stock, the ACR, or both. This one has a little pinch adjustment down here at the bottom for length of pull, and then it has a very SCAR-ish lock. I mean, almost looks like it's copied directly from the SCAR on the side. All right, so now you can see how that stock system definitely influenced small arms thinking around the world. And then we have the aluminum upper up here. Now the rail on this only goes to here, then the rest of this is a handguard. So your rail and monolithic rail only goes to about here. That polymer lower, ambi-fire controls, multi-caliber, all that stuff that, that the SCAR program brought to market, the Bren 2 pretty much clones. And so this is a very popular rifle. We're seeing these rifles being used in the war in Ukraine, and I actually love the Bren 2. I think the Bren 2 is an outstanding rifle, and I've had a good time with it. It's a little bit heavy. I wish you could get it with a slightly smaller profile, thinner profile barrel. But if you're looking for a rifle that isn't an AR-15, for a go-to rifle, you certainly couldn't do wrong by taking a look at the Bren 2. Now, also, it's worth mentioning, it's kind of obvious for those of you that are gun people, but I will mention it, the AR-15 is direct gas impingement. Well, we should say internal piston, but commonly referred to as DI. The guns that we have out here are all piston driven, either long stroke or short stroke gas pistons. The Brens are short stroke. All right, so let's take a look at another rifle that was inspired by the program. This is another rifle that just recently showed up on the US market. It's called the Perun, and this is the X17. They have an X16 and 5.56. It's technically a multi-caliber firearm, but right now there's available in 5.56, and this is a prototype. It's listed on their website, but the link isn't hot, and there's no information on it, and we just recently released a video on it if you want to learn more about it. But once again, here we have a rifle from Slovenia. This one obviously is inspired by the SCAR/ACR. If you take a look at the stock, it literally has a clone of the ACR stock on it. If you look right here, it's a little bit different, but its pinch adjustment for length of pull is the same. How the cheek riser works is the same. When you open it up, it has a storage compartment in there. It's literally a copy of the ACR stock. Now, this rifle, unlike some of the other guns in today's video, has an aluminum lower. Now, some of the early Perun X16s that you'll see out there have polymer lowers, AR-15 type lowers, because this is a modified AR-10/AR-15 lower. So it is feasible that they could also offer a polymer lower for this one and bring the weight down just a little bit. But primarily this gun's made out of aluminum, like the XCR from Rob Arms. Makes use of an AR-10, AR-15 style handguard that's modified out here with the M-lock, has a step down, which is nice for using like D-balls and lasers and things like that. And on the end, we have the new Huxworks Flow 30 cal can on it. This gun has a non-reciprocating charging handle that can be moved to either side, has the ability for ambi fire controls. If you want to drop a standard AR-10 trigger into it that has ambi, you can do that, so you can gain that ambi functionality. Has QD mounts for slings on the side of the receiver. This is, again, a rifle very similar in terms of features as the SCAR, ACR, and other guns that we're showing out here today. This gun is clearly influenced by the program, and it's actually a really, really neat gun. Now, I have read some comments on our video that there's some non-flattering things about the X16 out there. We've not had any problems with the X17, and we've put several hundred rounds through it. If we run into a problem, we'll do an update video, but so far things have been working just fine with this rifle, and I actually enjoy shooting it. The only thing I can really ding it for is the weight, so maybe some more polymer components to get that weight down would be a nice addition to the rifle's development. So this is actually a really cool rifle. It's the SCAR at home. It's the new Jakl from Palmetto State Armory. Now, this gun borrows heavily from the AR-180 but so did other firearms that we've talked about today, like the ACR. So as I've said many, many times in video, there's truly no new firearm that I've seen come to market in my lifetime. Every gun that's new that's come to market has been a combination of existing designs, repackaged, made into a new firearm, and sold. And that's not to say you can't get some really revolutionary changes by doing that. You take the Glock, for example. That gun changed the handgun market in the United States, globally, and there was nothing new about it. It wasn't the first polymer handgun, it wasn't the first gun to hold 17 plus rounds, it wasn't the first striker fired handgun. But what they did is they took a bunch of parts and ideas from different guns that were out there, some of the HK's designs, and repackaged it into a new handgun. And boom, we have the world's most popular 9mm handgun. And it's available obviously in every other caliber cartridge known to man. So the Jakl is based obviously on the AR-180 a little bit. It has some SCAR components into it on the bottom here. This is just a standard AR-15 lower. This end cap allows it to interface with its upper seamlessly. Back here we have a 1913 rail system, and then you can put any number of different types of folding stocks on this particular gun, and that would be something that would be you would see come from various guns that I've talked about today, because a lot of companies have made adapter plates so you can put different types of stocks on them, or just stocks that bolt directly onto the existing hardware of these various firearms. Now this gun has side charging capabilities, just like other guns that we've talked about out here today, which again comes from the SCAR ACR type program. Although side charging is nothing new, it predates the SCAR. This can be reversed and it's non-reciprocating. We have M-LOK, which is the new standard. It beat out key mod, kind of like the VHS and beta wars, if you're old enough to know what those were. And this is a rifle. It may look like it's super stumpy, but this is not an SBR. It has a pin welded muzzle device on it. The guns right now are available in 300 blackout and 5.56, but like multi-caliber guns that we've talked about out here today, I'm sure that they're going to be making them in other cartridges down the road. And so, yeah, very, very cool gun. Reasonably priced. PSA is known for their pricing, which is usually pretty competitive and very easy. And if you're looking for something that's not an AR-15, that's domestically produced, and you want to support a company like Palmetto State Armory that's all about arming Americans and fighting for our rights, then you might want to take a look at the Jakl. It's been a really, really good firearm for us. Jason and I both really, really enjoy this thing. So our enemies have been busy little bees copying our work, cheating off our homework. So if you take a look at the Russian XM17, definitely inspired by guns like the ACR. Lots of polymers, and yeah, I mean, just looking at the firearms I'm going to talk about in this segment, you're going to see that they're clearly inspired by the guns I've shown you this afternoon. U.S. designs, although the Belgians did develop the SCAR, it's now being made in the United States. It was developed for our SCAR program. Another rifle out there is the Iranian Fatah. Now, if I'm butchering the name, I apologize. I don't speak the language. But again, the Iranians have clearly copied our homework, and the Fatah is definitely inspired by the work that we've done here in the West on our SCAR/ACR type programs. Then we have the Polish MSBS, which I've talked about, an allied country. Their rifle, as I've already mentioned, looks almost identical. You might be able to confuse the MSBS with an actual ACR because they look so similar, but the MSBS has more functionality, including, like I had already mentioned, the conversion to even a bullpup, which is really, really cool. I would love to see that gun on the US market. Another gun is the Japanese Type 20. It's made by Howa. The Type 20, clearly inspired by our homework. If you go to Brazil, Embel has the IA-2. Again, looks clearly inspired by our homework. It's a beautiful rifle, and I love Embel's work. They make, they made outstanding FALs and other firearms. They definitely do quality work, and it's another gun I'd like to get my hands on, hopefully one day. And then we have the Chinese XT97. Now, the Chinese seem to change infantry rifles as frequently as they change their clothes, potentially, but this new rifle clearly looks inspired from our homework. And yeah, it's kind of disheartening when you look at your enemy countries that are opposing you militarily, like Russia and China, copying your small arms designs and your aircraft designs and your weapons, missile designs and everything else. They copy everything because of espionage. But I guess it's also the most sincerest form of flattery, right? When you copy somebody else's work, because they know that we as Westerners wage war like no other country. And the weapons we develop are bar none better than anything else developed anywhere else in the world. The West dominates technologically. And that's why our enemies want to clone our work and copy our work, is because our stuff rocks. And even though I'm not all that big of a fan of the SCAR, it's still a great rifle. It just is. Now, I would prefer to take an AR-15 M16. I'm just more familiar with it. I have a bias towards it. But that doesn't mean the SCAR isn't outstanding. A lot of people run that thing, and it's an outstanding weapon. ACR, it's got its hiccups. It could certainly use some additional development, and I hope it does come back to the U.S. market, but still, solid rifle. I love this thing. So anyway, I think it's really cool that all these countries are basically copying our work, but yeah, it's interesting to watch, and I'm sure you're going to see a lot more countries out there develop weapons that are very similar to the stuff that we're developing here in the West. It seems to be the trend, and it's been that way most of my adult life. All right, guys, hope you enjoyed today's video. If you have any questions or comments, comment down below. I try to stick around for the first couple of days a video goes live to answer the questions you guys may have. If you'd like to support us here at the Military Arms channel, please consider becoming part of our Patreon family. I'll put a link in the video description below. Also, right here on YouTube, you have the option of thanks and join. Right underneath the video player you're watching right now, mash either one of those buttons. You can help support us in the age of demonetization here on YouTube. And last but not least, swing by, check out Copper Custom. Thank you for 15 years of support, and we'll talk to you guys soon.